am well on my way to getting going with some Konflikt 47. Some of the bigger things standing in my way are some of the bigger vehicles for my US faction, and the terrain itself. The terrain though, it's gonna be easy. I got big plans for Konflikt 47 terrain, and it starts with the Bocage battlefield terrain. This is a set of maze-like terrain that we here at EonsOfBattle have created inspired by the weird world war of Konflikt 47 to make a battlefield that is very evocative but also very functional in game. Playing against Sean and his shooting armies so often has taught me more terrain is always better than less. These pieces are giant walls of overgrown trees. You can push them together to make long walls of terrain that are impassable for tracked and wheeled vehicles, or leave them separate for some nice cover for infantry to weave through and take cover behind. My Firefly airborne infantry have the jump keyword so they won't be slowed by these Bocage bastions. These pieces recreate battling in woodland surrounded by overgrown hedgerows. The perfect thing for a battle in a field. You could almost call it a battlefield. Now I've got a lot of trees to paint and some tricks to help me do it. I have a ton of these trees to paint, and to give myself a speed boost, I got some spray paint. It was very slim pickings of matte colors at the store, but I found these Rust-Oleum flat colors, earth brown and army green. I took the whole battlefield outside and then primed them in the brown, and then sprayed the green from above like a zenithal. The colors are pretty close in hue, but that's okay, there's still plenty of painting left. I just wanted some woodland colors down everywhere. Also, hilariously, I accidentally made a proper camouflage pattern on my spray paint tray. Keeping the camouflage going, I don't have a ton of experience with green paint, so I want to try out a few different recipes to see what I like the look of. First off, some camouflage green dry brushing, then Eternal Hunt, a more vibrant green color, also dry brushed on the leaves. And then Emerald Forest, a brighter green color. Looking at these tests side by side, I think the big winner was Eternal Hunt. But I don't want to dry brush this over everything. I threw it into my airbrush and just sprayed this on, dusting it everywhere, and then a nice thick coat on all of the tree clumps. Then I made up some color soups of bootstrap brown mixed with angel green, and I also made a mix of angel green with some fir brown. These two soups will give me some nice contrast on my clumps of plants. I also got a little excited and managed to spill the brown color. Luckily, you can't be too messy with painting nature. All the pointy pine trees got the browner base coat, and the ground vines and shrubs got the greenish bath. These thin colors let a little bit of the undercoating shine through, while leaving the texture visible. Once I had my base coats down, I did some washing using algae green and brownish decay. I mixed these with plenty of speed paint medium and then slobbered them all over their respective plants. Then to boost the saturation, I took Ghillie Dew and almost neon green and I sprayed this on the tall trees. Then to bump this up even more, I dusted on actual neon green over the tops of the trees. All these layers together gave me some good looking plants. Then for the roots, trunks, and the pine trees, I dry brushed a little bit of desert yellow on there. Then a little more dry brushing a leafy green to bring out the texture. The plants are now done, and now for the cobblestone. I took some deep gray into an old ratty paintbrush, and I brushed this onto the stones really rough so that the dark brown primer is still there in the recesses. Then I took some gray castle and I dry brushed this onto the stones. And just like that, my battlefield is half ready for action. While I was painting up these trees, I was thinking long and hard about what conflict mini I want to add next to my army. The linebackers would make a lot of sense because they're jump walkers, so they can actually go over this terrain. But that Stuart light tank with the plasma gun is kinda calling my name. I haven't decided yet, but my bocages are now bocaged. I now have so many trees, and I thought that these would be a pain in the butt to paint up because it's just a whole bunch of green, but actually just a little bit of washing, a little bit of dry brushing, it all came together really fast to give me a solid table's worth of terrain. Although this isn't really Konflikt 47 terrain, this stuff right here is kind of historical. Like, I could easily play bolt action on this and it'd be completely fine. And if Sean had his way, I would be playing bolt action. But this is not for a historical, this is for Konflikt 47. And it's time to paint up the science fiction element to this terrain set. I grabbed the parts of the mysterious shack. These are a series of walls and doors that can create a typical building you might see dotting the landscapes around a bocage. It can provide a little cover and protection for some infantry, or be hiding something more sinister. There are some barn doors and brick options, and also doors and windows if you want to make these buildings fully enclosed. There's also some ruined versions of these that can be standalone or stacked side by side to lengthen the building. I'm going to leave the roofs unglued so that they can be removed for gaming, and there will be a good reason for going inside the building to destroy what's hidden inside. Zombie containment caskets. In the world of Konflikt 47, the power of rip technology has made teleportation tech possible, but the Axis can't just chuck zombies through a portal. A good zombie outbreak needs some finesse and prep work. Hidden in these unassuming buildings are fridges full of zombies that have been smuggled in, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I started out painting the buildings, hitting them with a white prime. Then I taped off the floor so that I can airbrush the walls. I made myself a mix of lava orange and basilisk red for these bricks. I removed the tape and then started to dirty up the ground with a watery bath of deep gray, making it thicker around the walls. Then I used Brigadine Brown, thinned down, and I slobbered this all over everything. And I used it full strength on the wooden doors. Once that was dry, I gave the parts a dry brushing of barbarian flesh over the brick and then some desert yellow over the wood. I put a little bit of metallic on the hinges and door handles, and that's the floor and walls all done. Now for the roofs. I slobber deep gray over these using my last little bit of brigadine brown to make some dirty spots. Then I dry brush them with Cerakote silver to make them into shiny metal sheeting. Then for rust, the best rust in the business, dirtied down rust. Also, availability on EonsOfBattle.com. I thinned it down 50-50 with water and then did a few layers of rust spots. Then, right before it was dry, I spritzed the still wet paint with some water to make it flow and spread out over the clumps that I painted. Once that was dry, I could stick them down into place, and now onto the zombie bits. I airbrushed these with Metal Alchemy. This is a blue-silver color that flows really nicely through the airbrush. Then, to make them colder, I dusted on some Raging Sea from underneath. Then I washed them all with some dark tone to make my recesses grim and dark. After dry brushing a silver paint, my fridges and ice makers were done. Now to make my zombie popsicles. I picked out some dark colors, Deep Ocean Blue and Diabolic Plum, and I base coated my boys using the purple on the skin and the blue on the clothes. I'm hoping that these colors will help sell the deep freeze that these zombies are waking up from. I took some grotesque green and I started to sketch on some highlights, and I mixed this into my colors to make some gray shades to further highlight my boys. My rustic shack is all done, and what is inside that shack but a little covert Totencore zombie operation. The German faction in Konflikt 47 has access to zombies, which is an incredibly powerful tool, but I figure it needs a little logistics, it needs a little prep time to get a good zombie outbreak going. This is a piece of terrain and an objective. My US forces have to come put a stop to whatever this is before those zombies have had enough time in the oven. Or rather, the freezer. And to properly make it a freezer, I have a secret weapon, Green Stuff World Liquid Frost. I haven't gotten a chance to play around with this stuff too much. It says it takes between 4 and 24 hours for results to show, so guess I just gotta see what happens. I gave this a long time on my vortex mixer and a lot of shaking. Then I splashed it on thick to the lower halves of all these techie bits, and it's pretty clear and gel-like as it goes on, but hopefully as it dries, it'll make some ice crystals. Alright, my zombie fridges are all lathered up, and so they gotta rest for a little while or a day. And while that experiment is running, I think it's finally time to paint up a tank. I have painted super tanks, floaty tanks, giant mech walkers, but I've never painted a traditional, realistic green army tank. And I'm not starting today, this one has a Tesla gun. This is Konflikt 47's take on a Stuart tank. It's a hybrid kit with a plastic hull and then resin and CO cast components. I threw the resin into my ultrasonic cleaner while I got to work building the body. While I was putting it together, I noticed that it's a very small tank. I thought since this guy carries the Tesla gun, it would be more of a main battle tank, but it's actually more of a light vehicle. The tank body went together nice and smooth, and it had all sorts of little bits to add texture, and in no time it was ready for the conflict bits. The resin required a little bit of cleanup to perfect it, and for some reason it has an entire CRT TV hanging off the side. Looking at it all together, it's almost dwarfed by my infantry. This is my third conflict vehicle, and I want to try a new recipe. I gave the Mini a white prime. I really like the box art with the subtle green camouflage, and I want to try to replicate it as close as I can. I mixed Midnight Olive with Olive Drab and I sprayed this on. Then I sprayed a little bit more pure Midnight Olive from underneath to make my darker base coat more saturated, then a little spritz of Olive Drab from above for brightness. Then to make camouflage, I put on some strands of Silly Putty, wrapping these around my tank randomly and then using the back of a brush to tap these down so it's a snug fit. Then I sprayed some pure Olive Drab to start my highlights. Then Olive Drab with more grotesque green mixed together for the lighter stripes. I demasked and it gave me those subtle colors I was after, but it's a little bit too desaturated. I dusted some algae green speed paint over the tank to make it greener. This speed paint is transparent so it won't cover the work I've already done, just tint it. Then I added some decals from the Konflikt 47 decal sheet. Right now my tank is fresh, so I want to put these on before I do my weathering. Over the crew hatch, which I guess is how everybody gets into this tank, I put 42B. After the decals, I hit the tank with a satin varnish, and now I want to try streaking grime. I've never had huge success with this stuff, but it should be the perfect subject. I painted this on, trying to only get it in the recesses, but it ended up everywhere. I used some makeup wedges soaked in mineral spirits to try to get off the majority of the grime. I worked in small sections at a time, not giving the enamels much time to dry so I could get a lot of it off. And on some of the more tenacious spots, I dripped a little bit of mineral spirits to rehydrate the paint to get it more flowy. This is just the cutest little tank. It looked much bigger on the box. This thing is puny, and it's looking really good. This is my second try at doing a green army man paint job. My first try was on this pond skater, and comparing the two, this guy is too dark. This little bit brighter green looks so much better. I think moving forward on my Konflikt 47, I'm definitely gonna be doing my vehicles like this. This looks really nice. And I think this is the first time I've gotten streaking grime to actually look pretty good. I think previously I've asked streaking grime to do too much. Like I make it a too big a jump in value. I have like a light colored mini and then I dunk it in this stuff and then it just kind of looks like black gunk in the recesses. Where here, the green is kind of a mid-tone green and then this is just a couple of shades darker and that looks really, really nice in all the nooks and crannies. I really, really like how it looks. I did get a couple of spots where I knocked off a little bit of paint. That always happens when I use streaking grime because I am impatient. If I had let the varnish sit on the model and properly cure for 24 hours, I bet I wouldn't have gotten even these little marks, but I like to go fast. So this will provide me pretty good protection after like 2 minutes, where if I waited the full 24 hours, it'd probably be bulletproof. And speaking of 24 hours, my little science experiment, the frost effect, looking back at my little zombie fridges, pretty much nothing happened. They look about the same with a little bit of goo stuck to them. I don't know if I just haven't waited long enough or I didn't shake the bottle enough. I shook it for like 2 minutes and then gave it 2 blasts on my paint shaker. But maybe I'm really nervous that nothing is gonna happen. I think I might shake the bottle up to a crazy degree, put on another coat and let them sit overnight. After 5 hours, the fridges were looking barely different. I could see a little something here and there, but it's not the freezer burn I wanted. This time I shook up the paint for twice as long and absolutely dunked the minis. Hopefully, this will work out. Moving back to my tank, I took Banshee Brown and I base coated the tracks. This was a little annoying to paint with the tracks fully assembled, but after that I hit the wheels with black and then grabbed another enamel, this time dark umber, and I washed these. Don't use a brush you care about for enamels, and the best way to clean them is to wipe away as much paint as you can on a paper towel and then dip the bristles into clean mineral spirits and then wipe again. Usually I do this 2 or 3 times until no paint is coming off. I cleaned up my tracks with a sponge and then glued them into place. Now I can start to beat up my tank. I did the sponging of gunmetal paint chips all over and then picked out a few details and decorations with a brush. The tool handles all got some black with deep gray, and then the shovel blade got a little dry brushing of silver paint. My tank is close, only the sci-fi bits left. I'm really jazzed about this little tank. It's turning out so good. I have painted the bolt actiony parts, and now it is time to paint the Konflikt 47 parts, and I have to make a decision. It's a more fun toy if I leave this turret free spinning, but I think the paint will turn out better if I glue it. I want to go pretty hard on the object source lighting. To prime my glowing Tesla coils, I mixed up ash gray and matte white to get a light color that'll cut through the dark green. In about 2 coats, I primed all the techie bits. Then I sprayed a little white ink through the airbrush to further brighten these and let some of that brightness splash onto the surrounding tank. Then I looked at where exactly the cannon sits and I sprayed some of this on underneath. Then I varnished my tank and then sprayed on some Raging Sea to tint this white into blue. And I sprayed this on the hull and then brushed onto the Tesla coils and power cables. I took turquoise siren, which is pretty close to the speed paint I used, and then mixed this with white paint to make some highlights, and I brightened up the coils and edge highlighted everything all the way up to white paint. This is looking pretty sharp, and for the screen I decided to paint it with red for contrast. I used orange and black to make the bright reflections and shadows, and to make this look a little more techie, I dripped some UV cure resin over the screen. I filled it up with goo, then pushed it around with a toothpick. Once it was touching all 4 corners, I added another drop to make a convex top, and I hit this with my UV lamp to lock it in place permanently. With the turret done, I glued it into position, and it's ready to join my fireflies in the battle. Now it's been over 24 hours, and it's time to check on the zombie fridges. Finally, I can see some crystals. They really exploded overnight, and oddly a lot of the crystal patterns are identical. It seems like the shape plays a role in their formation. I'm pretty happy with these crystals. I don't know exactly what makes them form. I'm pretty sure they're salt crystals, and I don't know if I just didn't let that first coat sit long enough and it was just the waiting around overnight that actually made the crystals form, or if it did need that second coat. Maybe a little bit more testing is in order, but so far, these guys look fantastic. I got my zombie fridges, I got my Bocage trees, I got a little tank. It's time to see what an entire table full of Konflikt looks like. This is a very different look to my usual Warhammer 40,000 battlefields. This is actually giving me flashbacks to Adepticon. The very upstairs of Adepticon is an entire floor dedicated to historical wargamers, and the historical people go really hard. Beautiful armies, beautiful terrain boards, everything is perfect, and this is definitely giving me those vibes. This is pretty darn wizard. My US Fireflies, the Pond Skaters, and this little tiny tank are looking really good, and I'll definitely need to paint up something big and juicy for Konflikt in the near future because this feels a little bit like a skirmish force. And after painting this tank, I'm really pumped to paint more vehicles. This guy was a delight. And the line breakers, the big ol' walkers, they also get Tesla guns. There's also Tesla gun like terrain pieces, but I think I want it, if I'm gonna have Tesla on anything small, it's definitely gonna be maybe some more of these guys. Just the cutest little tank with the little machine gun on top. I love this guy. I am very excited for some more Konflikt 47. I know Sean is tinkering around with the Axis, and I've got the Allies, and I've got plenty more in the works. Actually, maybe even some more terrain in the works. This is the Bocage battlefield, and it's available on EonsOfBattle.com. And I need to get ready for some more painting because this is not the end of Konflikt 47. Thanks for watching.